chapters that I'm like, wow, there's so much of this that we kind of quit doing because we didn't need to in the seller's market. And now that we're kind of shifting back, I'm like, oh yeah, this is why we built all of the systems that became kind of like not needed. Now they're needed. Like I'm starting to see some things creep back through, even though we're still in a seller's market, that I think bears revisiting. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I think there's enough content here that if we end early, we end early, but I think we're gonna have a good discussion on this today. So we are talking about bulletproofing the transaction, and haven't been speaking a whole lot in the last few shift sessions, but I'm Elizabeth Gilbert. I'm one of the group coaches along with Kelly Turco. And of course, Brooke is here under the guise of Christy Grossman. So you all know her as the right hand to Christy. So welcome again. And I think we have one more session after this, right? And then we're done. Yeah. So
second to last.
Second to last. Save the best for last-ish. This was a good one. I love this quote from Abraham Lincoln at the very beginning. If I had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend 6 sharpening my axe. It is so true. All of the work is only a result, like all of the end result is only from all of the work that you put into it going up to the result. So, and the transaction, as we know, can make or break the whole deal is when you're under contract. And there's so many moving pieces, right, to the back end of the transaction, that keeping them all straight is like the first thing that you have to learn when you're brand new to the position, is what are all the moving pieces and parts? Who are all of the players? I mean, it really is almost like assembling a baseball team, and here are all of the people on your team, and here are all their positions and their names, and how do you keep them all doing what they're supposed to be doing? And I think when I think back to 2008, when we really had to lock down what we were doing, we became less of just the paperwork person, which I still hate that term. Like, my TC just does my paperwork. I'm like, no, your TC does a whole lot of things. And your job list just got bigger. So not only are you organizing the paperwork, but you are now essentially a general contractor. So if you imagine all of the things that go into building a house, and one person is in charge of making sure everyone does their job, that's what a general contractor does. Keeps them on time, on deadline, deliver what they're supposed to deliver. And they're the ones that take the brunt of things not happening on time or getting delayed. So we're going to walk through I have some really good questions here as we think about what we might need to change or improve going into the shift. And so my first question was, what needs to change in your current transaction process to get ahead of potential problems?
You know, I think before the market got so tight, I was just talking to my ops team about this other day, like we would have rules for when we were calling throughout the week. And I didn't even realize this, but because things were pending so quickly, we just stopped that. And we were like, hey, we probably need to do that, because our goal was always to call them before they would call us. And so that was one of our ahas, is like, let's get back to scheduling Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I do transaction calls or whatever that schedule is.
Yep. To be proactive in your phone calls rather than reactive.
Right.
Yep. What else needs to change to get ahead of those potential problems?
I think too, like the quote from Diana Coast on page 243, the number one challenge we will all face is a level of sales skills of the co-op agent. We have been in a market where, we have new people, so many new people, who have just gotten deals and they've been easy. And I think that as our role is going to change, that we are going to have to educate the co-op agents through the transaction and really pick up, their job to make sure we get it to the finish line.
Yeah. The co-op agent, it's more important now to help them manage their emotions in this whole thing too. And there was one thing that an agent told me when they got into the business, when I got into the business, which was, my job is to be the calmest person in the room. And because you're messing with people's money, you're messing with people's family, you're messing with people with where they live. These are all big items in somebody's lives. And we tend to take it for granted because this is like, we do this every day, all day, every day. Well, our buyers and sellers, this is all overwhelming to them. I don't even care how many houses they may have bought and sold. It's still a process that they're not involved in daily. And we have to remember that. And how do we help them manage their emotions? And not only our buyers and sellers, but the co-op agents, who, you're right, may not have been through anything like this before. And if they're new or newer, I have no problem asking a co-op agent, can I write up that amendment for you? Can I send that to the lender for you? Can I, and sometimes I don't even ask, sometimes I just do it in an effort to over communicate. So I may not say, hey, I know this is your seller, but I'm going to make sure that the title company has the contract. I'm just going to do it. And if the title company gets a contract from me and the other agent, that's okay. A redundancy is not going to hurt them in any way. I'll have to see if I can find that and post that in the group. No, I don't need to post it. It's out on the interwebs. There is a PDF called 88 Types of Turbulence. And just use the numbers 88 and go Google that phrase, 88 types of turbulence. That's what we actually share with our buyers and sellers about what can go wrong with the transaction. And those are all of the things that we get ahead of. We've either seen them or our broker has seen them. Someone on our team has seen all of those things happen, which is why you really need a real estate agent in the first place who has dealt with that stuff. But it's just being open and transparent to say things can go wrong. We expect things to go wrong, which is why you have us to know what to do when the things go wrong. I always found it super helpful. So what can we be doing to build a good relationship with the co-op agent?
Part of my process is to send out an email to the co-op agent, just kind of introducing myself and starting to get that communication open so that they know that they can also come to me if they can't reach.
Yes. And I would advise, I used to rely heavily on email too, and that works in the market that we're in now. As we make this shift, being more proactive and actually getting on the phone with them. If you can take it a step further, and I know this is going above and beyond, but sometimes this is what it takes. The co-op agents you have the best transactions with are the ones that you know, that you've actually met in person, that you have some sort of relationship with. So how do you build that relationship? Getting on the phone with them, for one. I still love, if you're going to email them a video so they can see you, they see how you speak, they see your mannerisms. And if you're giving them an update on the contract through some type of video communication, I think that just takes it like ups your game. And I know I don't particularly enjoy recordings of myself. However, I know they work on buyers and sellers because I have an intro email that goes out after the phone call that says, this is me, this is my job, this is what I'm here for. At the end of the transaction, when they see you, if they see you at the closing table, they really feel like they know you. And video to me is one of the easiest ways to build that relationship so that the next transaction, the co-op agent was what, like, man, you know, if Amanda's the TC on that side, then I definitely want to do a deal with that team again because she made it so easy. And this is a good way, as a side note, to increase your reviews. Because if you go leave a review for a co-op agent on their Google site, or you ask them, hey, I've really enjoyed working with you, I'd love to go leave you a review. Do you prefer Google, Zillow? Where would you like me to leave that? They'll tell you. And in return, they'll go, hey, that's a great idea. Where would you like me to leave one for you? So if you're not getting reviews from co-op agents, this is a good opportunity to start that too, because everyone wants to know, is this a good person to work with? And I will tell you, in the down market, we know who the not great agents are, don't we? And if there are a lot of houses on the market, am I going to help my buyers purchase one from a great agent who I know will keep the transaction together, who will do everything they can to make sure the whole thing is a success? Or do I want my buyers purchasing with an agent on the other side who does the bare minimum? And we're likely to lose the transaction anyway if that co-op agent's on the other side. So maintaining your reputation goes a long way too, right?
Elizabeth, I think too, like it's interesting because even doing all of that, we don't know how that will help our team members in the future get more deals under contract, right? Because we're making them look amazing and they're like, hey, we love working with them, not just in the offer part, but the whole process. I think that's huge.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, one of the big things that becomes even more important now is deadlines and the phrase time is of the essence. And like I was just now, I had to print off my chapter 12 of the shift in a PDF format because I left my book at home. And if I had waited until the last minute to try and print that, I would have not made it on time to this call because the printer jacked up. So when you think time is of the essence, don't wait until the last minute to do things. Even if even if the lender says, yeah, the appraisal is due back next Tuesday, I'm still going to call on Thursday, on Friday, and on Monday to see if they have the appraisal back, because I don't want to rely on the lender to remember to reach out to me. I'm going to be proactive and go get that. And that's in my checklist, right? That's on my, we started using Sisu tasks. So build that into your system of, I know it's like we used to do 2 weeks for an appraisal. Now it's a week and a half, just because I want to be ahead of it. And if you have to annoy somebody, or if you have to be a little bit of a pain in their side sometimes, I'm going to say that's okay. It only seems like you're being a pest to you. They get these requests all day long. So
I think the same goes for, like, if we're representing the seller, inspection periods on, even though it's the buyer's responsibility, following up with them ahead of time. Hey, how did the inspection, so that you're not waiting to the last minute, you're not waiting to the last day to potentially get a repair request, and just making sure you're continuously communicating with the co-op agent with all the deadlines in the contract in advance.
Yes. Yeah, I don't want to be pushed up against a deadline. I want to have time to deal with a problem. Which, again, that just goes the inspections. It seems like every agent in our market center just waits until if you have 10 days for inspection, they wait until the 10th day to send you anything. They just do. I don't know why. It feels like they just sit on it. Don't do that. Because if you're going to back out of the contract, when do you want to know? As soon as possible, right? Yes. Yes. So one of the concepts in here too, that I just kind of loved was what kind of scripts and role play might we need to be doing or practicing in order to keep the buyers from having buyer's remorse? Because, just because things are going well, it doesn't mean that the buyers are feeling that way. And as more and more houses may come back on the market, right? We're seeing a little bit of houses sitting on the market a little bit longer, which means possibly inventory can be increasing. And that's what happens with buyer's remorse is they put their money down on a house and they're in the process. And in the meantime, a house next door or down the street comes on the market. And then suddenly the buyer's like, oh, we didn't see that house. Well, let's go look at it. Or that house looks so much better than the one we bought. Can we get out of our contract? So we're going to have to get good at our scripts and dialogues and do role play to practice to keep people on board. Because if we're the ones having those conversations, and we're staying in touch with the buyers on a regular basis, I promise you this is going to come up of, well, the house down the street looks so much better. Like if we legit want to get out of our contract, how do we do that? You're going to start getting those questions. And so being prepared to answer them will behoove you. And then when things go wrong, you have to have that script as well. So when the house doesn't appraise, when they find a laundry list of things wrong on inspections, what are we going to say to the buyers? What I love most about my hairdresser is that she makes me feel good about my hair every single time I go to see her. And I get the same color, I get the same cut, and she's just always like, it's just so pretty, like that blonde just really pops on you like every time. So yeah, guess what? I love going to see her. So how can your buyers or your sellers even love having a conversation with you if they see, oh, it's Leanne on the phone, I'm going to pick it up because I really love talking to Leanne. She makes me feel so good about myself. You're going to have to start saying things like, that house was just so amazing. I'm really glad you chose that one because I know your kids are just going to love that basement. Now, don't say that if they haven't mentioned having kids and loving the basement, but you want to tie into something that they've already said and reaffirm their decision and that it was the right decision. It's funny because I think as operations, we have more pull, like we have more connection sometimes with the buyers and sellers than even the agents do, especially during the transaction. And we have a lot of power in that position to hold everything together.
Like all that S in our disc, right? Like becomes such a benefit to just reassure and love on them through the process.
Yep.
Well, and I was going to add, I think the word that comes to me is motivation, tying it all back to their motivation and really understanding that. And you can understand that as a TC or an ops manager or a listing manager just by simply having conversations with them. You're talking about the ops relationship. I have a client of an agent back from when I was a listing manager that years later still comes to me for real estate advice, still posts on my Facebook and asks about my adventures. And like, I have that really strong relationship just from being his listing manager. And I knew, like, at that time, they hit some rocks in their transaction, but they were moving into their retirement home, their forever home. They were pulling equity out to go on travel. So I knew that motivation. And when bumps came up, I could always tie back to that. Like, I know this is really tough right now, but I also know it's important to you because I know that you guys are retiring and you want to go on those adventures and you want to have your forever home. And that helped settle situations that got rough, that we're coming back into because it was just no appraisal contingencies, no inspections, and we're coming back to those situations.
Yep.
So I love that you said that, and it really, rung a bell that we're coming back to that and how important it is.
For sure. For sure. One of the things that they talked about in the book was constant communication creates customer confidence. And I love that. And if that's true, what does your communication cadence need to look like? Hannah talked about, we need to be on the phone with them Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And, it depends. I think you can build that into your system, into your checklist, those check-in calls, those care calls. That is just to pick up the phone and say, hey, it's been a crazy week. How are you? How are you holding up? Are you getting packed? Do you need moving boxes? How can I help? Because that can even be a text message. Like, I'm not going to lie. There's a place for text messages, the thinking of you, sending them some heart emojis and saying, call me if you need me. Call me if you don't need me. I'm here for you. And
I would say the questions you're asking too, right? Like, how do we just dig deep and not just like go through I hate to say scripts because I think scripts are great, but I think people need to know we care for the process because it is such an emotional roller coaster.
Yep. Yeah. And I've always loved that, letting them know it's okay to feel the way they feel.
Yeah.
It's just such a weird thing to say. And yet people need reassurance on that. I guess it's a tactic script basically that says, I've helped a lot of people through the process of buying and selling a house. And what I have found is that this can be a really stressful time for them. And I was just wondering if you were feeling that stress right now too.
Yeah, that's good.
To say, this happens to everybody. This is not just you're not on an island. We're here to help you. And even if your agent is running around crazy busy, you're the one who can step in and really love on the client. And even say, if Angela's my agent, I can easily say to the client, hey, Mr. Seller, Angela asked me to reach out to you and see how you're doing. She was just thinking about you the other day and we were just talking about you. Are you doing okay? And bring your agent back into the conversation to let them know it is still a team effort. You haven't been passed along. Your agent and I talk about you every day. And that was one thing that you may need to get back to this. You may need to talk about every file every day with your agents. Because it may just get to that point where we need more communication. And that's something of a value proposition that your agents can say to their clients too, is look, when you're under contract, my team and we talk about you and your file every morning. Just to review what's going on and what we can get ahead of. So know that it is not out of sight, out of mind for us. You are always top of mind and always within sight. I think that's super helpful. And then the one statistic that I saw in there that I was like, oh yeah, was your did not close can increase from under 5% to well over 25%. So be prepared if you don't have a checklist for when something doesn't close, get ready. Do you have your how to put a house back on the market checklist? Do you have a how to cancel a contract checklist? Because you may need that.
And I would add too, like, are you tracking your fall through rate? I think that's really telling. If you're keeping an eye on that, to one, know if you're above or below what that book says could be the numbers. And then how are you trying to move that, right? It's like anything else we track. If we track lead conversion, well, we should track fall through rate and say, okay, what did we learn from this? What can we do to not make it happen again so that it continues to solidify our processes?
Totally. Totally. And no, whatever your rate is, you're always going to have something that doesn't close. And what was kind of funny is what I witnessed was on my previous team, as we went from selling 40 homes a year to 118 homes a year, it seemed like we didn't close more, like more houses didn't close. But when your fall through rate is 5% and you're only selling 40 houses a year, that's a small number. But when you're selling 118 houses a year, 5% is a bigger number. So it seemed like, it's like, how come all these houses aren't closing? I was like, well, it's because we're doing more business. So it's actually, I hate to say it, it's actually kind of a good sign that it felt like more weren't closing, because it meant our numbers were going up. Our unit count was going up. So it's almost all how you spin it, right? But just be aware of it, like Hannah said, it for sure. What questions do you guys have? Anything that came up for you that in this chapter? I know we have less than a minute left, but anything that is worth noting? What's the one thing you're going to implement from this chapter that you know you're not doing now that can help you get ahead when all of this happens? And here's what I would love for you to do. Take that one thing and post it in the Be a Boss group or the Mega EA Facebook group. What's the one thing that you're going to implement from this chapter that you're not currently doing, but that you're anticipating you're going to need to do? And yes, we have a couple of, opportunities. So group coaching, we meet 6 times a month on different topics, and we are constantly talking about shift. So if that's of interest to you, there's a link right there. And then I know Stephanie Brackett has another shift course coming up in the fall, which we're practically in the fall at the moment. Some of it may not feel like it. It's probably still hot out, but fall is just around the corner. So anything else, Brooke, that I need to add, or?
I think you hit it. Shift classes coming up in October. We have group coaching. And then, of course, I was about to post the link to the Be a Boss group. The way to access the Be a Boss group is if you are in one of our coaching programs or if you've taken one of our classes, but we definitely would love to see your ahas in there and keep the conversation. We only have one shift class left, like we mentioned at the beginning of class. It's in 2 weeks. That will be the last one, and we just want to stay in conversation with you guys. So join us wherever you can.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming today. Have a great weekend.